With Colby Covington kind of being the laughing stock of the MMA community, today I wanted to watch a video by TJlovesFights titled The Quiet Downfall of a UFC Loudmouth, and of course talking about Colby Covington. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Guys, I have not watched this video yet. TJlovesFights will be in the pinned comment description down below if you want to go check out the channel. Let's watch this video together.
Well, this looks like the end for Colby Covington. Looks like we're finally here. The true end to Colby, the end to his undeserving title shots, and what looks like the end to his career in the limelight in general.
You know what's funny is, unfortunately, and this is coming from somebody who enjoys Colby Covington, and long story short, I am so one of those guys that believes Colby's a character, and I enjoy him for a character. I love how I love the senseless trash talk. I love how he goes over the line, everything like that. Man, his losing screenshots are the worst. He looks battered in these pictures, man. I don't know how Colby can take such bad photos in the octagon, dude.
Last week, Colby got the break speed off of him by Joaquin Buckley, who has just got his biggest win to date and extended his 6-fight win streak, looking like a new problem for the welterweight division.
And I hope he goes all the way, man. I really, really like Joaquin Buckley. It was one of those fights that I watched that I was hoping that neither fighter would lose.
As for Colby, the longtime welterweight staple looks to have basically signed his retirement with a subpar performance and is probably going to have a few fights with older fighters before he completely signs off. So
and now with that video, he's apparently going to fight Gilbert Burns in Miami, or at least that's what the UFC is pushing for at the time of recording this video.
Let's look at Colby Covington's career over the years. Let's look at how good he actually was and what led to such a quiet downfall to one of the loudest mouths in UFC history. I would imagine most fans know of the rise of Colby Covington and how he got his stardom, as there are many great videos out there explaining it, but those new to the sport, I'll briefly explain.
Yeah, and he's obviously going to get into it, but the biggest thing for him is when he was on his last fight in the contract and he ended up just saying what he had to say about Brazil.
Colby was a great collegiate wrestler, and fun fact, was the roommate of John Jones at Iowa Central Community College.
Man, Colby in his pictures, man. Hang on.
Fun fact, was the roommate of John Jones.
I don't know why. Colby, every time I see a picture of Colby somewhere, it's just funny.
At Iowa Central Community College. This wrestling base would transfer over well into the UFC in terms of effectiveness, but didn't bode too well with fans, as it was mostly chain wrestling, lots of control time, not a lot of striking, and as a result, not a lot of finishes.
I think he changed that as time went on, though, because he ended up when I compare him to Khabib, I mean in the sense where it's active wrestling, throwing shots, getting position, throwing shots, taking you down, throwing shots. I think he improved on that as time went on.
Though he was winning, Colby wasn't building an audience or hype around him. And as the story goes, after Colby's win over Kim Dong-Hyun, they were going to cut Colby from the roster despite him being 7-1 in the UFC because his style was boring. So after his next fight and win over Damian Maia, everything would change.
Knocked him out! Brazil, you're a dog! All you filthy animals suck!
Yeah.
After his biggest win to date in Maia's home crowd, he would call out Brazil and went from a relatively quiet fighter to one of the most loud and obnoxious fighters.
And this is where I always say, you can't blame Colby Covington for what he does. So many people nowadays are like, well, character or not, the guy's a piece of crap. He actually, this I do believe is a character. I wholeheartedly believe it. And I've spent time watching Colby Covington on different political podcasts and just him when has his persona turned off, right? And he seems like a regular guy, and the fighters all say that themselves. Joe Rogan has always said that. People always talked about that with Colby Covington. So why are we taking this and saying this is the real Colby Covington? I don't blame him at all. He saved his career, and I think it's a little bit dishonest when a lot of people say that they would never do something along the lines of this to make the amount of money that Colby made.
Willfully playing heel. Dana hasn't actually corroborated Colby's story, but if true, Colby's transition to heel worked extremely well, as he would obviously stay in the UFC, go on to fight Rafael dos Anjos, and then former welterweight champion Robbie Lawler, capping off a 7-fight win streak en route to an undisputed belt. But let's pause here for a quick second. So this is probably peak Colby. Super loudmouth, in the limelight, peak heel personality, ability, and career.
Yeah, and he was looking good, man. He was on a really, really nice win streak, and for those people who always say that Colby Covington was never that good, I understand what you mean from a technical perspective, but I believe this version of Colby Covington could take on the best welterweights.
And riding a 7-fight win streak with big name wins over former champions in Robbie Lawler and Rafael dos Anjos.
And I also know what you're going to say. Those fighters were past their prime. It doesn't matter. They were still really, really good. Like, Lawler was a little bit of an easier win then, but dos Anjos, man, that is a fantastic win.
And a great win over legend Damian Maia. But let's take a closer look into Pete Colby. These were big names, but how old were they when they fought Colby Covington?
Yeah, Damian Maia didn't look good at all. Robbie Lawler didn't look good at all. And I will say, like, while it was also past his prime, Rafael dos Anjos, he still was a phenomenal fighter. But it's to the point where you see Pete Colby, and you've watched him take on guys like Jorge Masvidal. And I understand you could talk about Jorge Masvidal in his career as well, but just the 2 fights with Kamaru Usman in general, who I believe to be one of the greatest welterweights of all time. The fact that he hung with him and made it as dirty as it is, and he almost won the fights, man. He almost won both of those fights. He's proven that he is a top caliber fighter, at least like the prime version of him was. I understand that the wins could obviously be better, but I do believe he belonged at the top of the division.
Damian Maia was damn near 40 years old when he fought Colby. Rafael dos Anjos was 33 when he fought Colby. And finally, Robbie Lawler was 37 when he fought Colby. While during these 3 fights, Colby was in his prime at 31. We've seen that 33 seems to be the drop-off in terms of performance, and 2 of the 3 biggest wins in his career thus far were well above that age.
And that's actually refreshing to hear too. Your prime is typically 28 to 32, 33 being the drop-off, as TJ said. So it's very nice to hear, because you see people talking about, like, no, you can fight well into your 40s. Like, yeah, I mean, like, the Glover Teixeiras exist, but you're still not in your prime.
Rafael dos Anjos starting that drop-off with Colby. So sure, these were great wins, but none of these big names were nearly in their prime. So what happened when Colby faced top welterweight competition in their prime age? Colby would of course be introduced to the top with the first Kamaru Usman fight. And you know what? Say what you want about Colby now, but he did show out in this fight.
And he showed out even in the Joaquin Buckley fight, man. Like, his heart was there, his grit was there. He just doesn't have the technique anymore. He is, I don't want to say washed, but he is a shell of the fighter that he once was.
Remember everyone thinking this was going to be a boring decision, because both guys had a reputation of having a very wrestling heavy approach to most of their fights that usually led to a decision.
Yeah, nobody knew who was going to win that fight either, because if you remember, like, a big thing to talk about with this fight, everybody was like, well, the guy who beat Colby Covington lost to Kamaru Usman, and vice versa. Like, it was a really, really fun build-up for a fight. This was like as 50-50 as a fight could get, and the fight only proved that.
But not this one. These 2 wrestlers decided to say, fuck it, let's just box and go to war the entire fight. And it made for personally one of my favorite fights ever.
Agreed. And I still wish that we could have seen a lot more wrestling exchanges from them than we did, because I wanted to see who would actually come out on top.
Probably top 15 for me. Colby, with his amazing cardio, would press the action and actually look like he hurt Kamaru a couple times, to where it even looked like Kamaru had to fake a nut shot to get rest. I'm not saying Colby would have won this fight had it gone to decision, but he did take a couple rounds from Usman, and me personally, I had it tied into the 5th.
I don't recall. I haven't watched the first fight in a long time. I remember being that close, and it was close enough to not complain either way. Maybe it was the second fight I thought Colby won. I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. I'd have to watch them again.
But whatever success Colby had in this fight would be washed away as Kamaru would pull away with the boxing, find a giant right hand late in this fight that would drop Colby, and then another to send him to the floor again to finish him by punches. You know, despite Colby getting finished, he showed insane heart and even got his jaw broken in the middle of the fight. And
yeah, his heart is what carried him through it. His cardio is what carried him through it. And the reason you're not seeing Colby Covington fight like that anymore is because, of course, he doesn't have that same drive. His heart was there, but his body was not. This version of Colby Covington lasted with one of the greatest welterweights of all time, a welterweight which, hot take by the way, prime Kamaru Usman I think would wipe the floor with GSP. I wholeheartedly believe that, and Colby hung with this guy. Colby hung with him and borderline won those fights, so he absolutely was a top contender.
Continued to fight extremely competitively. This is definitely peak Colby Covington, and probably the last time the UFC fan base as a whole had pretty good respect for him. Colby would bounce back with a win over former champion Tyron Woodley, and it was classic Colby. Relentless pressure, non-stop boxing and takedowns, and look fresh even after the fight.
Yeah, and this is the other fight where another win that didn't age so well. It's Woodley saying he's going to let his hands go for how many fights then?
He did get the finish in a weird way. Tyron got taken down and started screaming about his rib as it got broken. So not necessarily a highlight finish, but a good performance and a finish nonetheless. And it wouldn't be classic Colby if his opponent wasn't 38 years old. This would lead to another title shot and another chance for Colby to win over Kamaru. But of course, he ran into peak Kamaru.
I need to figure out which fight because I haven't watched them in so long. I usually I remember who I thought won each fight, but for these ones for some reason I don't remember what the scoring was. It to me personally. Regardless, it was close.
This time, Kamaru had ran through Jorge Masvidal twice brutally in the second and took.
Yeah, and that was a huge thing too. And he ran through a really good version of Gilbert Burns too. Knocked him down with the jab. Like Kamaru was an animal.
Out Gilbert Burns in the process as well, showing that he has well surpassed Colby from the first time they fought. But still, Colby showed signs of great boxing and even looked like he wobbled Kamaru at the end of the fourth, making this fight not necessarily a war like the first, but pretty competitive nonetheless.
Really? I thought it was a war. I loved both those fights. Like, it's very difficult to beat the first one, of course, but I thought it was a great fight as well.
Colby would fight in the next year and make the grudge match with his friend turned foe, Jorge Masvidal, and though he won every round, I'm going to be honest, I don't think we remember much from this fight.
I remember it being a steamroll by Colby Covington. It was one of those classic Colby Covington performances. Colby was still, I don't know if he was at his peak, but he was still more than capable. But then again, like, he was also fighting a journeyman Jorge Masvidal.
All I remember is Jorge dropping Colby and Colby saying he took a knee for first responders.
This is the thing. I don't understand why people don't find that funny. Like, obviously, like, Colby doesn't actually believe, and I know I'm not accusing, like, you specifically, viewer, of saying this. I'm just generalizing, because you see people who hate Covington say, like, oh yeah, there's part of Colby Covington who really does believe that he took a knee for the first responders. Like, really? It's just a funny way to get out of it. Kind of like what we all know that he's trying to emulate Chael Sonnen, and he did a good job with that one.
Which is hilarious, but again, Jorge was 37 when this happened. Colby would then lay dormant until Leon became champion, and now with Kamaru out of the way, Colby shit-talked himself back into title contention and showed absolutely nothing. First of all, he tried being heel as usual and fucked up on his now infamous 7th layer of hairline.
But I'm so glad that happened, man. When I said the 7th layer of hair.
And in the actual fight, he didn't show much. Sure, he did release x-rays later that showed he broke his foot in the first 30 seconds of the fight. So if that's really the case, it was really on Leon for why this fight was so boring. But
he also looked like crap in the Joaquin Buckley fight, so I have no clue what to believe, because I could see Colby Covington just posting a random break from a random x-ray and that being it.
Still, it was another tough break for Colby, who suffered his 3rd loss in a chance for the undisputed title. And if it isn't blatantly obvious already...
Hang on. Like, look at this, man. Colby has the worst screenshots. I almost feel bad for him. Look at Rogan back there, too. He looks hyped up. And this guy back here looks disappointed. This guy was a Colby fan. I've never really paid attention to a lot of these, like, the screaming people in the back. Like, what an environment to be in, dude. What an environment. Poor Colby, man. Poor Colby. Takes the worst screenshots in the UFC.
This has been the career cycle of Colby ever since the first Kamaru fight. Colby loses a title fight, waits a year, gets an easy win over someone really old, shit-talks his way back to a title shot, and a very undeserving title shot at that. After Colby lost his first fight with Kamaru and got a win over a washed Tyron, he had this tirade, got another title shot against Kamaru before Leon, who was on a monster 10-0 loss streak and was... was like the first title fight for Colby when he was the interim champion. It was absolutely deserved, but man, like, after that, it was just, he's literally Chael Sonning his way through the division, just yapping and getting himself a title opportunity. But again, I don't blame Colby. He got the big fights. He got what he wanted. Like, if everybody had the ability, I think that they would absolutely do this. Way more deserving of the title when Colby got his second. After Colby...
And by the way, I'm not saying that it's right that he got the title fight. I'm just saying I understand why Colby does what he did.
Beat a washed Jorge. He pulled the same shit by waiting a year and a half and shit-talking his way back to a title shot with Leon. All the while, Bilal was similar to Leon before on a 10-0 loss streak. And I think with Colby turning down a fight with Shavkat and ducking that monster, he hoped to start the cycle again with a win over Joaquin Buckley.
And it's important to note that he turned down Ian Gary too. Like, he's getting away with it by you need to meet these 3 conditions in order to fight me, Ian Gary. And it just, of course, like, ridiculous conditions that would never happen. So now he can sit down and say, and it's a little bit smart, man. It's a little bit smart. He can get away with it, but unfortunately, with the way everything works right now, the UFC community only likes winners for the most part, and Colby Covington isn't a winner. Like, everybody liked Colby when he was winning, but as soon as Colby Covington loses, then everybody just jumps ship and his gimmick sucks.
But unfortunately for Colby, Joaquin isn't 40 years old and is on the rise, not the decline, and it really showed. And just like that, on a fight night card, Colby got his ass beat and has seemingly fallen out of title contention and the top for good. So of course the next question is, how will Colby be remembered? Honestly, I don't think UFC history is going to remember him all too much.
Yeah, like TJ said here, I can't see them remembering him too much. He'll have some really funny like trash talk moment highlights because there were some really good lines throughout history, but yeah, like his one fight with Kamaru Usman might get thrown in the Hall of Fame one day, but other than that, I don't think anybody's going to really sit down and remember Colby. I'll remember Colby. I enjoyed Covington. I enjoyed him a lot, but I can't see the vast majority of the MMA space remembering him all that well.
Much. Looking at his resume, it isn't as good as I thought before making this video. I always thought Colby was the elite of the elite in the welterweight division.
But this I disagree with. He absolutely was the elite just by the way he fought Kamaru Usman. Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that. And Rafael dos Anjos, that's a great win as well. The only problem is like there still is conditions on the win with Rafael dos Anjos, but man, like I still think like he absolutely belonged at the top.
Had a pretty good resume and someone who was always in title contention, but looking back, his resume isn't all too great. Sure, he had 3 title shots, and in one of them looked really, really good, but besides that, a lot of his biggest wins were against guys that were way past his prime, and he always lost bad when facing prime competition.
He didn't lose bad against Kamaru either way. He didn't lose bad at all.
And I think resume-wise, Colby is going to be mostly remembered for his competitive fights with Kamaru Usman. But if your resume is mostly being remembered for your competitive losses and you didn't have that many highlight finishes, I don't think that's a resume that's going to be remembered all too much.
Yeah, I understand this point. I do, but there's this thing that's been going around the MMA space for a little while now where it's like we need to stop glorifying people for their losses. I disagree with that personally. If someone put up like as good of a fight as Colby did with his first Kamaru Usman loss, I think that's something to praise. I think it's something to respect. Like I always look at that and I'm like, man, Colby Covington, that was a champion that showed up. But I understand like it's not technically a champion, but you get what I'm saying.
And though everyone knows who Colby is, he never stuck with the UFC fan base like a true star, because of how infrequent he would fight. Instead of anticipated returns like other stars who take long layoffs, most people were like, oh shit, Colby's fighting, when Colby came back. And as for personality, as much as Colby is loud and the heel, I don't think he's going to be a personality fans are going to remember for a very long time.
Yeah, and I highly doubt that he's going to be able to bring it back too, because for Colby, he needs to win. Like, even if he just came back and won one fight like dominantly, that would help him a little bit. He would just... You could have the conversation with people where it's like, oh my God, Colby's back. Oh my God, maybe he actually did take the Joaquin Buckley fight off the couch. Oh my God, maybe he actually did break his foot in Leon Edwards' fight. And that's the narrative that can kind of get spun around. I don't believe either of those, but at least he could work with that and he still could at least have the chance of making something for himself. But I don't think that's going to be the case.
He never really had natural charisma and was trying to be more edgy than a natural shit talker. Chael Sonnen is someone I think has had a similar career to Colby, was primarily a wrestler and was close to getting the belt but never got over the hump. But his shit talk and charisma was so natural, and there's so many moments fans will always remember from Chael.
Yeah, and Chael never had to swear. Chael never had to, well, I mean, Chael crossed lines, but Chael was just so smooth with it. Chael was naturally funny. You can tell that Colby unfortunately had to rehearse a lot of his lines. But for me personally, that's what I liked about Colby Covington. Excuse me, I hit the wrong button on my stream deck. That's what I liked about Colby Covington, man. I loved that it was just nonsense Xbox Live 360 style trash talk, just spamming insults out of everywhere. I find that funny because it's so ridiculous. Chael, I find funny for a completely different reason, but Colby's trying to do what Chael does, or excuse me, what Chael did, but it didn't really work out.
Colby, on the other hand, just tried too hard, and fans always hate that. Look, you can be the biggest shit talker or not talk at all, but it seems like fans appreciate genuinity, and Colby was far from that. So, of course, what do you guys think about Colby Covington's career at this point? Will he ever get back to title contention? Probably not. But will he ever get back to competitive welterweight fights towards the top?
Well, it looks like Gilbert Burns wants to fight him, and I would imagine that's actually a fight that Colby would want to take. Colby called that out just kind of a little bit, but you can't really take Colby Covington's call-outs all too seriously. I could see that being a fight that he wants to take because Gilbert appears to be, again, way, way, way past his prime. Colby can get a win. It's a decent matchup, and I would look at that fight and say, Colby could win that fight. Colby very well could win that fight. But I thought that was a fantastic video. Guys, TJ Loves Fights has a fantastic channel if you would like to check him out in the pinned comment description down below. But if you are already subscribed and already watched TJ's channel, then why don't you check out this reaction video we recently did as well by Hopero MMA talking about the UFC slowly turning into boxing. I would love to have you guys over there. Thank you very much for being here, and take care, everybody.